David Goss, Tommy Scoops here at SoccerWise. It is time to talk Sporting Kansas City. We did so in our season preview here with the Home and Away podcast host, Drew. If you are a member of our Patreon in our Discord, he's very active in there. He is one of the best, and so we were really excited to do this show with him. Love the way he sees the game, love the way he analyzes things, love his show. He put you to shame a little bit with his wood paneling in his background, and so I was appreciative of that. I love a little Kansas City history and historic house, but it was a huge week. It's a huge offseason for Sporting Kansas City, and, you know, I was there for the NWSL Championship. The KC Current, they built a new building. They sold it out every single game, one of the best teams in the league. I'm there, and you're like, right, this is a soccer city. And you see the Sporting Kansas City still, you see the store downtown, you see the murals, and you're reminded, the Matt Beaslers, the Graham Zusis, like, this is a market that bounces for soccer when it's good. It hasn't been there in a little while. And this is sort of my first feeling from the outside of like, okay, this could come back.
Yeah, one of the lines I used in our preview was that, like, they never graduated from, like, MLS 2.0 to wherever the hell we are now. And I think this offseason was the first time where both of us were like, okay, like, they're there. They understand that you can't only build through the draft. You can do that. Like, that is a way to improve your team. But the dynastic type run that they had over the decade, or at the very least just a lot of success and always being really good, that was built largely through the draft. That was built when they were still the KC Wizards. Like, that's how early some of those draft picks went through. It was an incredible run. It's something to look back on proud. But the league has changed, and around it, this team was a little bit slow to change. And this offseason has been a big, serious MLS 4.0 or whatever era we're in. That is what this offseason has been. They were the team that had the first Cade, Ram, whatever we want to call it, the cash trade market. Dejan Jovic coming in. They go get the starting center forward, a 20-goal scorer from the reigning MLS Cup champions. They go get a DP number 10 from abroad. They go get another winger from that same club, Aris Thessaloniki. And here we are. They're bringing new players to the team. They're spending more money than they have before. And I think that's all positive news, Goss, because if this team is good, as you say, the fans are there. It is a beautiful, wonderful atmosphere when this team is good. They have consistently shown that. It's been a good atmosphere even when this team is bad, which is always a great sign of how strong the support is and how loyal the support is. So I hope that those fans are rewarded in 2025. Yeah,
you could argue it is the most successful MLS original market that was able, obviously through the rebrand and the stadium build, to like create sustainability of market relevance and a fan base. DC, the original, but then has struggled to maintain it as you talk about 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. KC has been the most successful, but now you always have to evolve. You always have to sort of rebuild, and this is an opportunity for them to do it. I think it should be exciting for the fan base. I do wonder how much Andrew Wiebe's at fault for the drop in form over the last few years. I don't really have anything to put towards that, but I'd like that quote to be on record that David Goss wonders if Sporting KC's struggles are related to Andrew Wiebe.
Just asking questions. Hey, I'm just asking a question.
And if it gets pulled out of context, that's not on me. Like, if someone pulls that out and puts that out there, like, that has nothing to do with me. So it's just questions that are being put out there. Capital J journalism, independent journalism, like, that's just what we do, and so there's nothing we can do about it. Spotlight, you know, like, it's just the the squad. Yes. But we have talked KC a bunch now on the show, and it finally feels a little different, even though we're still holding our, you know, we don't trust Joaquin Fernandez or any of these moves. We've still got some of our jokes in our back pocket, but hopefully the future is bright for this Kansas City team. I hope they are able to host some big games and we get back out there. NWSL Championship was amazing. If you didn't listen to our post-game shows around it, I just kept saying I've never had a bad time in Kansas City, so I'm always a fan. And I would love to be there once again for a big game.
Coincidentally, Andrew Wiebe wasn't there while you were there, correct?
Yeah, good point.
Just asking questions. Are those two facts related? I don't know.
100%. And I've never seen Marco Apostolic and Andrew Wiebe in the same room at the same time, too. So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. We'll get to all of them. But first, let's dig in a little bit more on Sporting Kansas City with Drew. We've got some big teams to still talk about in our season previews. And one of the ones that's had the biggest offseason, yes, I said it, one of the biggest offseasons is Sporting Kansas City. Peter Vermees' squad once again, and we are going to talk all about it with Drew Vanderplug here from the Home and Away podcast, one of the best covering Sporting Kansas City week in and week out, giving you all the tactical analysis that you need, and one of the members of our Discord and one of the members of our community that we're so excited to have the opportunity to chat with. Drew, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. I'm happy to be here and happy to hopefully provide a little insight on Sporting Kansas City and what we can look forward to this season.
We stream our show live twice a week on YouTube, so you can watch us there. We're also posting all our season previews there as well. If you go there, you would know that Tom has recently moved into a basement with some stylish wood paneling, 1970s probably. Drew, you are smacking him down with this 1890s level wood paneling.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing living in a 100-year-old house in Kansas City. It's got a lot of vibes for sure.
Listen, we love history. Peter Vermees has been around for a while. We love our Wizards. We love our history here on this show. If you're listening for the first time, you can come join us, SoccerWise HQ, on all your socials, SoccerWise anywhere you get your podcasts. If you are listening on SoccerWise, go listen to the Home and Away podcast, especially as we start to figure out what this team looks like. Tom, we start all these conversations with our transfer update. For some teams, there's not much in or out. For some teams, there's a little bit or a lot. Kansas City, it's been a few years since this has been a long conversation. But, Tom, there is a lot to talk about. I put the out first because I think that's a huge part of this conversation. But both ways have been eye-popping for Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah, it's been a super busy offseason for Sporting Kansas City. They finally did kind of a remodeling of this team that I think has been a couple years overdue. The first domino to fall was, maybe not the first one, but the biggest one, Alan Pulido. He has left, and he is back to Chivas. Johnny Russell, club legend, also left, as did Tim Melia, Andrea Fontus. Those are some big departures. These are key players from this team over the last few years. And incoming, they've brought in Dejan Joveljic, the first internal cash transfer to be announced in Major League Soccer.
Say it, Tom.
As a decade to get the first one in the door. Dejan Joveljic, $4 million plus a big new contract. They outbid Tigres. That is some pretty fun news. And then shortly thereafter, they officially acquired DP number 10, Manu Garcia, and Russian winger Shapi Suleimanov, both from Aris Thessaloniki. Gosh, how's my pronunciation there? Not quite as good as you, but not so bad. I don't think it was so bad.
No, okay.
And I'll leave the one last addition to you.
Well, you thought it was over. You thinking DPs, big names, European pedigree, but you forgot about the Maracas. Mason Toye signs up for Sporting Kansas City. We are going to listen to Doyle's comments and thoughts on the team. We call them our Doyleisms. We sit at the foot of the stage and we listen to the great mysteries inside of his head. We also have Andrew Reeby set lines for us that we'll finish with on this episode for each team. The line for Mason Toye on goals this year is 19.5. So everyone's taking the over. I already know that, so we're not going to talk about it, but that's where it sits. Drew, we just went through a lot. We went through a changing of the guard going out. We went through maybe something we didn't think was possible, which is a sale of Alan Pulido, and then all the big moves coming in. What have you made of this offseason? What's the experience been like of all of a sudden now KC fans have to follow Tom on social media?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been the biggest thing. It's been the longest time since Sporting Kansas City has ever been in a position where Tom is giving, useful reporting on what they're doing. I mean, honestly, when you look at just Joveljic and Manu Garcia, that's reportedly around $9 million worth of transfers. Mm-hmm. They haven't done that since Pulido and Gadi Kinda. And so it's been 4 years since they've paid a transfer fee really over $1 million for anyone. So it's nice to see that investment and that intent and that ambition from the club. I think, there's still a lot of work left to be done. And I think even Mike Burns and Peter Vermees would agree with you in the fact that there's more work to be done. But this is the start, I think, and a good foundation for a process of a rebuild that was candidly quite necessary.
There's been times where we've talked about how this all fits tactically and what these players are, but I think the big excitement for us at SoccerWise has just been getting younger and hopefully being healthy and being able to rely on pieces game in and game out, which hasn't been the case for a very long time. I've made the joke a couple times, brought it up. It took a very long time with Sporting Kansas City because Peter Vermees is the longest tenured coach in Major League Soccer, and therefore, even though rosters have changed and players have changed, there is still continuity through it all, and so it's hard to say everything has completely changed. I'm curious your thoughts before we dig in on this specific roster about where we stand with Peter Vermees right now and sort of what he represents to the fan base and what he still represents as a figure in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't last as long as he has while being garbage at your job, right? It's obvious that he is a quality coach, and I think probably gets overlooked a little bit in the league as far as his tactical chops, a little bit, because it's not new, because it's sort of something we're familiar with. We don't have a whole lot of new takes on what he's doing, but he has been a very good coach that has gotten a lot out of fairly menial investment in the past. That has been kind of a hallmark of his time in Kansas City, and I think this is an opportunity for him with this rebuild, with this increased investment, for him to show that when he's given a little bit of money, I mean, they're not spending like Atlanta or Austin are, but when he's given some investment, what he can do with that talent, and additionally how he can evolve this team a little bit. I think you noted very accurately that the team had gotten pretty old, and as a result was running a tactical system that was fairly, I don't want to call it boring, but it was certainly not very dynamic.
Yeah.
Right. It was a lot of sideways passing, a lot of ball control. Positional play has been a key component of his tactical system probably since 2017, really. And so they have a format by which they sort of pass the ball into the goal. I think you've seen in the last couple of years, like since Opta has been tracking it, 4 of the 10 longest passing sequences leading to a goal in league history have come from Sporting Kansas City. So it has been a little less dynamic in style, and I think what we're seeing with this shift, not just in investment but also age of personnel, is an opportunity for them to be a little bit more aggressive going vertically towards goal. We're hearing a lot of that from Vermees in his commentary over the offseason about their willingness to try to attack goal more directly. And I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that activity that was maybe more of a hallmark of the early Vermees teams, with the pressure and the counter pressure and creating turnovers and being more aggressive towards goal.
We talk about tactics being converted to what your talent is based off skill sets. We don't often talk about it based off age, but athleticism, all of that does make sense. It does all go into it. We have down for the competitions teams are playing in. Sporting Kansas City, thanks to the U.S. Open Cup final that they made, are in CONCACAF Champions Cup, which is a little bit of a surprise based off the year they had. That is the only competition they are in from a cup point of view, which is probably a positive. It allows you to focus on Major League Soccer. You'd, of course, want to be in Open Cup, and I think we've talked about it on this show a little bit. I think Peter Vermees did very well last year, as did the whole club, in pushing the fact that Open Cup is important, and now we see 16 MLS clubs teams instead of 8 this year, and hopefully we see 27 next year, or 37, whichever, whatever expansion does between now and then for this league. Let's jump into Doyle's thoughts, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this transfer window for a couple years for Sporting Kansas City, where they parted ways with really the last of their old guard and Johnny Russell and Tim Melia, and they fully committed to a new era, bringing in Manu Garcia, number 10, Spanish number 10, and then a Russian winger, Suleymanov, both from Aris in the Greek top flight, and then going out and breaking new ground. The first team to use the internal cash transfer system in MLS to acquire Dejan Joveljic, who was so great for the Galaxy last year. So that's 2 new DP attackers and 1 TAM level winger. This team's got a lot more talent, it feels like, than last year, and that's good because this team was not good last year. I still have massive questions at D-mid. I still have massive questions along that back line. I'm not convinced that any of the goalkeepers on the roster are actually better than Melia, even though Melia is pushing 40. This still feels like the first 10, 12 games. Every single time out, we're going to learn something from this team, including just tactically, how much are they going to look like the Peter Vermees teams of 10 to 15 years ago, really the glory days of Sporting Kansas City when they were a vicious, high-pressing team that won the ball back quicker than anybody in MLS, held on to it a ton, and were always in the mix to win Open Cup, MLS Cup, came close on the Shield a few times. It hasn't been like that this decade. The last 5 years, this team has not been among the highest pressing teams in the league. So I'm looking forward to seeing these new pieces. I'm looking forward to seeing potentially a new tactical approach. And the variance in what, like, you could tell me this is a 35-point team, I would believe you. You could tell me this was a 55-point team, I would believe you. It's all up in the air for Sporting this year.
All right, a lot there. Let's start at the back. What, Tom?
That I usually see the optimism. I'm not suggesting that the ceiling isn't crazy high, but like I don't know if I see the 55-point total without another kind of defensive addition. Like even in the most optimistic of scenarios, though, I don't love being pessimistic on these. I think that was a little bit too far by Mr. Doyle, who nobody really confuses with some crazy optimist.
Do you think there will be defensive additions? Do you think there will be goalkeeper changes? Do you think we have the roster set?
I think that there's going to be, so I know that they're working on, again, depending on when this gets published, maybe this will sound stupid based on, either it's happening or not, but I know that they bid for U.S.-born Swiss Youth International center back Brian Oko. I think that's the kind of signing, like a U-22 center back or somebody who won't hit the cap at an expensive number, again, whether that's a veteran on a very small contract or a U-22 player. So I think this is generally what they've got, but maybe there's more surprises in store.
Drew, do you like Pulskamp as a starting goalkeeper right now?
I think it's time for Pulskamp to be the starting goalkeeper. I don't know that it's necessarily. I think if you look at their underlyings over the last couple of years versus Melia, it's kind of a little bit better in some ways and a little bit worse in other ways. And I think you're kind of, as far as wins added by a goalkeeper, you're probably in the margins between the two of them. And it's time at 23, almost 24 years old for Pulskamp to have the opportunity to show whether he is that goalkeeper or not. This is really the last year of his current deal where they have to keep him on the roster. So I think this is an opportunity for them to evaluate whether he's the guy or not and whether they need to really be aggressive about bringing someone else in. I think for this season, to Tom's point, the ceiling is not MLS Cup, right? The ceiling is maybe a home playoff game. So if that is what you're looking at from a planning perspective, it's okay to see what you have in the goalkeeping room right now. And then so from that perspective, I think it's time for Pulskamp to see if he can be that player.
So you're saying somewhere sort of between year one of a rebuild and year two is the feeling for this year of you've brought in a lot of new pieces, prove that it's worthwhile, and then prove that you can build something bigger coming off of this.
And that's what the front office has been pretty clear about. Burns said this at the end of last year. They've been saying it's a 3-window rebuild. That's really what they've been focused on. This is the first of those 3 windows. And so we're seeing the foundation being built with a couple of your marquee DPs, and I think over time you're going to see some of those other things addressed. From the back line perspective, I totally agree with Doyle. I think that they need improvements on the back line, but if you look at contextually where they were from a rebuilding the roster perspective, the majority of the personnel and the salary that they were able to move on from the offseason was on the attacking half of the field. So that would be the place where they would focus on reinforcements currently, whereas the whole back line effectively is out of contract at the end of 2025, including Radoja. So all of those players are out of contract at the end of this season, which would make a lot more sense from a roster building perspective for them to focus at that point in time on those improvements.
Yeah, Radoja, who you said better than me, has been like the main part of I've talked to a bunch of people this week about Sporting Kansas City, and everyone brings him up pretty quickly of like, well, I don't know that he's good enough at that position. I think where I net out is it's not his job totally. Like it can't fall on one person's shoulders, and I think for too long that's been a conversation around Sporting Kansas City is like, who's going to protect the back line? It's like, well, it would be nice to have center backs who can step in and win the ball earlier and be connected to midfield. It would also be nice to have another midfield player who also is trying to help you win the ball, or a tactical idea of when to counter press and when to drop in. And as we talk about them getting younger and ground coverage, and Doyle said a change of pace, and you mentioned, Drew, going back maybe pre-2017 to some of the other tactical ideas, that feels like the fix. The fix feels like all of it coming forward, and if everyone can take a half step in those positions, I think it's really big. We talked about it on Soccer Wise. I think Danny Rosero is the best center back they've signed in a long time, and if he can be healthy, that's a huge part of this. I'm curious what Volodair is. Drew, I've covered him a little bit at SKC too. Like, this was the point. U22 center back signing was for in 2 or 3 years. It's been now 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think that with Volodair, I was surprised to see them pick up his option. I'm going to be completely honest. He played a lot of minutes last year, and he was at sometimes fine and sometimes pretty bad. So I was surprised by that one. I think the one thing you guys are overlooking, mainly because he barely played last year, is they did sign a center back last summer in Joaquin Fernandez, who is a mid-TAM level center back, which is typically where you're expecting a starting center back to be. If you look at any of the other rosters in the league with good center backs, they're kind of at that mid-TAM level. He came in kind of unfit, and so barely played last year. He played like 105 minutes. The team was pretty poor by the time he finally made it to fitness. So I think that there's something to be learned from that player as well as to what the quality of their primary center back pairing is. But you're right. Rosero needs to stay healthy. And if Fernandez can be a real player, I think that that's an unknown that a lot of people have as to whether they can improve that quality. I think the last thing I'll add for you with Radia, which I totally agree with, Elias Sanchez was derided in Kansas City for not being able to cover a transition events, goes to LAFC and becomes one of the best sixes in the league again.
Made the right choice.
I'm with you a little bit. Like, you've got to, some of this is tactical setup and maximizing your players effectively.
I would like it to be known that we did not overlook Joaquin Fernandez. I chose to not talk about it, so I didn't make jokes about how he is the 37th TAM center back signed midseason who didn't play for Sporting Kansas City in a row because it's been frustrating.
I was going to say, if you put Fontas' name on the back of his shirt, how many people would notice?
Or the
He's
80
quite
other.
a bit taller than Fontas, actually.
There we go. Let's talk about Dejan Joveljic, Tom, because this is the huge spend for them. It is the first gate, so it changes a little bit for people that aren't paying attention. He's the first player to ever be purchased inside of Major League Soccer for straight cash, not for GAM, not for allocation money, outside of the salary cap. Sporting Kansas City went out and paid the LA Galaxy $4 million to sign him, and then he's graduating off his U22 contract because of his age, so they're giving him a new contract, which is a large investment as well. This is an MLS Cup winning center forward, but he was also at best the fourth best attacker on the LA Galaxy because they were the best attack, one of the best in Major League Soccer history. What is the expectation? How surprised were you, maybe, that it was Sporting Kansas City, and what do you think about for him for this year?
Yeah, pleasantly surprised, right? Like, because this team just haven't used transfer fees and put big contracts very much at all. Like, they had been a little bit slower than other teams to get to the new era, and they did that by kind of finally acquiescing to say, okay, we'll go, Alan Pulido and Gotti Kinda, like you were saying before, Drew. And then it's pretty much been it. Like, they spent a fee. It was around $1 million, maybe less than $1 million for Eric Tommy, a couple of the U22s, which I thought was good. But, like, this was a team still transitioning from, like, MLS 2.0 to MLS 4.5 or, like, whatever stage right now. Like, they've been slow. So this offseason, I think, has been very good. Like, you look at a guy like Manu Garcia, but the biggest one here is Dejan Joveljic. So you say that, like, he's kind of easily the fourth best player in the Galaxy attack, and, like, that is technically true, but I think that undersells Dejan Joveljic because we've talked about it on the show, and you can look at, like, well, this was what he was before, Gabriel Peck and Joseph Painsil came. And again, I think all of these things are technically true, and it's not unfair to bring up. I don't know that he'll be exactly what he was last year because, again, the supporting cast around him, the system, everything else was great. I have all of the confidence in the world that he's going to be much more productive than when the Galaxy were missing the playoffs. Because, again, like, the structure around him is so much better. And again, like, I do believe a lot in Manu Garcia because of his profile, because of he's just a pure chance creator. That's what he is. And even if they didn't sign him, I'd still be telling you I think Dejan Joveljic is going to be much better than some of those, like, bad Galaxy years because, like, I can't say enough how bad Douglas Costa was and how difficult and just unable to play him with Chicharito. These are things that, like, he didn't have a chance to succeed. So even if he's in, like, even the Galaxy have been, Like when Alan Polito's on the field, he scores goals, and Willie Gatta's on the field, he scores goals. This team creates chances for their center forward, even without a ton of quality around him. So again, no, the players around him aren't Ricky Pooch, Joseph Painter, and Gabriel Peck. But I still think that this is an extremely high floor signing, and I absolutely love it.
One of the craziest numbers that I've ever seen in Major League Soccer was in 2022, Dejan Joveljic had 11 goals in 980 minutes because he was basically a full-time super sub, only started 7 games. Last year, 15 goals, 6 assists for him, still only 1,900 minutes because of some injuries, because of some rotation and all of that. Andrew Wiebe has set the line for us at 15 and a half goals for Dejan Joveljic. Drew, what do you think about this? Are you over or under?
I'm an eternal optimist. So I'm going to hit the over on this one. I totally agree with Tom. I even nerded out and did some Y-Scout scouting on Manu Garcia. This guy is
Hell yeah.
This guy is good. He's really good. And he's
Hell
a
yeah,
player,
Drew.
He's a player that Sporting has not had since Benny Feilhaber. I'm irrationally excited for Garcia. And I think he loves to hit a through ball. And Joveljic loves to get on the end of a through ball. I'm gonna hit the over on that one.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Joveljic in those spaces as good a finisher as anyone in Major League Soccer when he's put into those spaces. But he also makes very good runs in the box for pullbacks. So you have the ability where if it's coming from the wing, he's still going to be an effective finisher. If it's coming down the middle or in transition moments, he can still be dangerous. I do think we talk a lot about force multipliers. Like, I do think Mano Garcia's effect on Eric Tommy is going to be really big as well, so that Eric Tommy can be a secondary or third playmaker. And now you're talking about one of the best in that position in Major League Soccer when he's healthy and when he can be a part of the group. So I'm pretty excited about all of that. I questioned the signing when it happened because I do think in the grand scheme of things, Willie Agata is a good deal. And if the team can get better and is going to spend big, where would I do it and how would it be done? But I don't question the value for Dejan Joveljic, and I don't question that he can continue to get better because we've seen him get better in this league. He is still a very young player, and now that he has an expanded role, I think he can grow into it. So I'm going to go over on the 15.5 as well. Tom?
Yeah, over.
Ooh, a lot of confidence here. Let's now push it to Manu Garcia. Drew, you'll start because you are the one who is digging deep into the tape mines for this one. Wiebe set his goal plus assist line only in Major League Soccer at 19.5, and his comp was Carlos Heel, who put up 24 his first year in MLS.
That's a stout one. Over 20 goal contributions. That would be amazing. I think he's going to have a ton of assists. I don't know about the goals, so I'm going to go under on this one just because I do think he's going to be double-digit assists. I don't know if he's going to have the goals.
Talk to us a little bit about what you saw on tape about him and what has you most excited.
Just the ball comes off his feet so fast, man. Like, if you see, first of all, his press resistance is extremely good. He's extremely technical on the ball and can half turn out of stuff really quickly, but just the ball comes off his feet so fast. He also plays players into space a lot, and I think this is something that Sporting has really struggled to do for several years, which is play wingers into the space behind. And Daniel Shallowy is very effective on those types of runs. And it sounds like maybe Eric Tommy is going to be on the right wing in a lot of these circumstances. That is a key trait of his, is carrying the ball forward. And I saw a lot of that. Suleimanov as well likes a run off the back line. So these are players where he can really kind of play that ball into space quickly and create problems for scrambling defenses. And that's where I really think that a lot of the chance creation is going to come from. Maybe not as much primary assists all the time, but more creating overloads.
Yeah, Tom, I know you heard an over-under, you heard a line, and you wanted to jump through the screen to get it out. But I want to hear what Drew had to say because...
No, I'm glad. That was significantly better than what I was going to say, so I'm glad that you went
Well, I would say the first half of it is what we saw from Gadi Kinda, but the ability to then quickly get it off your foot into the attack in dangerous moments, that was a lot of the lack of his play. He was clean in pressure. He was an outlet. He was a safety valve, but there was not that threat on the other side of it. And as you said, since Benny Feilhaber, that's what this club has been missing, and it feels like that was the move. Tom, do you have belief in how it hits year one?
So, again, it seems contradictory that I agree with Drew here as well. Again, that, I really, really like this signing, but the goals plus assists being at 20, that's a stretch because I just don't see the path to getting the goals. And then, like, you're talking, is he going to have 17 assists or something? Like, that's an unfair mark to kind of set. But, like, I just think that he's going to be a pure chance creator. Hey, maybe if he gets PKs, this is different. But, like, his role is to set up Dejan Joveljic first and foremost. But Daniel Shalley's a goal-scoring winger. I don't know enough about Shapi Suleimanov, so maybe, Drew, if you have a wise scout on him too, would be curious to hear it. And I think Eric Tommy, he does a lot of things well. He's more of a guy who I could see being like the late arriver in the box to finish rather than Manu Garcia. All of that is to say, I really like the signing. I don't think he gets above 20 goal contributions just because I don't think the goals will be there unless he's taking penalties.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk Shapi real quick, he just really quickly,
yes.
Russian Johnny Russell is the best way I could say it. Like, he looks like
That's
Russian
beautiful.
Johnny Russell. He's not as gifted in chance creation, but as far as that sort of inverted onto his left dribble towards the top corner and taking on fullbacks, that is his vibe, 100%. And he has a rocket of a left foot. Like, those two things are very Johnny Russell-esque.
That part is off the Y Scout onto the techno beat highlight reel that I watched. I think the hard part for me with this is if Jake Davis has 93 assists, someone has to score those goals. And so Manu Garcia is probably going to fall on the end of some of that because he is the best playmaker in the history of MLS. And I'm so excited. He's going to play right back, Drew?
No, I think he's going to play central midfield. I think
Who the hell's playing right back?
Kyrie Shelton, I think, is going to be the right back. I know that's
This
weird
team's
for
going to
y'all.
concede 77 goals.
Tom's going to show up to open tryouts to see if he can make the right back
Did
position.
y'all watch Kyrie shut down Denis Bouanga in the Open Cup final? Don't speak too soon on him.
Okay.
But, I mean, I do think the team is pretty comfortable with Shelton playing right back a lot.
So then what do you see the midfield trio as?
I think day one, it's probably Manu, Jake Davis, and Radoja. I would expect that, but the young player to watch for me outside of Davis, obviously everybody knows Jacob Bartlett, the other Jacob. New homegrown signing, played a year at Notre Dame. He is basically the backup six. So I think there's some opportunity that you're going to see Bartlett play a little bit, and comes from a great soccer family, probably the realest homegrown Sporting Kansas City player since Matt Beasler, to be completely honest. And it's kind of funny they both played for Notre Dame as well.
Yeah.
But his family has been STMs forever. He's been going to games, ball kid, all that kind of stuff. His brother Lucas obviously plays for DC United. That's just a good soccer family, and I think that there's potential for him this year to get some playing time.
I also wonder if Shelton is the starting right back, where the space then is for similar to Jake Davis. Can you get Bartlett on the field in moments at that position where it's a little bit safer, there's a little less responsibility, or at center back, and then you sort of grow in confidence and slide into midfield when you need to. As we said, only one cup competition, so that changes things a little bit. On the Manu Garcia line, I'll finish this up here. I'm going to go over. I think there's a level of excitement for me with this group, with him. I went from like questioning Dejan Joveljic signing to being like SKC for MLS Cup, and there was not a lot of time in between, so that clearly shows how my mind works and how poorly I registered all of this. But I think it's going to be a fun season. It feels like the excitement is back. It feels like a stadium that has been one of the staples of best environments, guaranteed experience, like even from home, must watch, is coming back. And so I think that's a large part of the excitement for this season in MLS. If you want to follow it, you should go to the Home and Away podcast where Drew's breaking it all down. And you can come here to SoccerWise. We're going to cover it as much as we can as the season rolls along. Drew, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thanks, guys. Happy to do it.
Tom, I guess I see you, and that's it. For everyone else, we'll talk to you again very, very soon.